So I'm going to do a weird session talking about how to build GitHub pages using Azure. So my name is Chris Klug. I work at Active Solution, like a few other people here, where I do stuff. Architect, public speaker, developer, blah, blah, blah. I've been doing software development since 2000, somewhere between 1996 and 2000 was sort of when I started getting paid. And I decided that I was going to go back into blogging. I blogged a whole lot when Silverlight was big. I'm a former Silverlight MVP. I'm just going to go with that, setting the stage. So I started looking at blog posts, and this just came to mind when I started looking at blog posts. There are two problems in computer science: cache invalidation, naming things, and off-by-one errors. I want to update that and actually amend and say that there are three hard things to do in computer science: cache invalidation, naming things, off-by-one errors, and choosing a blog platform. Do not, for the love of whatever is holy to you, ask Twitter what blog platform you should use. Because there are about as many answers as there are people on Twitter. And that probably includes like Kim Kardashian. So I looked around, got a ton of ideas, and it's like, and I finally boiled it down to GitHub pages. GitHub pages is awesome. It's like hosted directly from your GitHub repo. Oh, like that. Just edit, push, and your changes are live. I kind of love that idea. It's very simple, easy to use. Doesn't take a whole lot to set up. I want to do that. So what are GitHub pages? Before I get started building my version, if you haven't seen it, I want to explain what it is. So GitHub pages, you have your Git repo, you write a markdown file, you push your markdown file to GitHub. GitHub is then nice and adds some magic. And then a few minutes later, your website, your blog has your content on it. That's about it. Except for the magic part. That probably needs a bit of explaining. So the magic part is Jekyll. So Jekyll is a static site generator. Some of you might have heard of it. It takes Markdown together with templates, creates a static web application for you, and that's about it. Very, very simple. So generally, what are the GitHub features? Well, it does automatic static site generation using Jekyll. Free website hosting. I love anything that has free in it, because that's just me. That's why we're here. Yeah, exactly. Free lunch. I'm not alone liking free things, apparently. Open source is awesome as well, because it's also free. Support for custom domains. I like that, because I want to have my own domain for my blog. I don't want to have chrisklug.github.io. I can have my own custom domain. They have TLS for free. No, sorry, no. The custom domain you have to own before, but they will do the redirect and setting everything up on. But they will give you TLS for your domain for free, which is really nice. So you just give it your custom domain name, and they will organize the TLS certificate for you and all of that. Sweet. Caveats with GitHub pages: has to be on GitHub. Duh. Yeah, obviously. 2, repo name must be username.github.io. Not a big deal, but it kind of annoys me. Because if you don't do username.github.io and you try to use GitHub pages, it becomes a sub-site for your GitHub repo where you can have static files as well, which is not what I want for my blog. And you cannot customize the Jekyll pipeline. So Jekyll has a bunch of, I think, Ruby-based plugins you can use to do different things while generating your application. You cannot modify the thing that's on GitHub because they have a standardized thing so that you don't break their build systems. Makes sense, kind of annoying. But I have worked with Azure. I know that Azure can do all of this for almost no money. It's just a matter of how much time you want to spend. I didn't want to spend a lot of time. I have other things to do in my life than coding. So what about automatic static site generation? Piece of cake, Jekyll is available as a Docker container. So I can just go and get the Docker container, run the Docker container, and get my static site generation using the Jekyll Docker container. Sweet. Simple as that. Free website hosting. No. Storage is, it has a bit of cost, but it's tiny. It's honestly tiny for a little website, so it's not free, but it's almost free. Support for custom domains? Yes. You can add custom domains to storage. Not a problem at all. Automatic TLS support? No, because you cannot add TLS, custom TLS, or custom domains and TLS to storage, unfortunately. so that's not possible. But if you put a CDN in front of your storage, the CDN can have custom domain and TLS and be in front of your storage, so basically that solves that problem. Repo must be on GitHub? No, it's DevOps, so I can host it wherever I want. Repo name must be? No, doesn't matter. No customization of the Jekyll pipeline? Doesn't apply because I'm using my own Docker containers. I can just do another image with all the plugins that I want for Jekyll to do whatever magic stuff I want with my code, so that's not a problem. So what I'm going to create here in less than 55 minutes, with a bit of snippets, I will admit, I'm going to do so that I push my markdown to GitHub repo. In my, DevOps repo. In DevOps, my pipeline is going to pick up that change. It's going to go and run a Docker container. It's going to use Jekyll inside of the Docker container to generate a static site. The static site is then going to be deployed to storage as a website. And then in front of storage, I'm going to go and put up the Azure CDN, and I'm going to put a custom domain on top of that, and I'm going to put SSL on that as well, so I get TLS. And then that is just going to front my storage. Fairly simple. Lots of moving pieces still and stuff to do, but fairly simple. However, it's kind of cool if people could comment on my website as well. Commenting on a static website is hard. However, Azure Functions is awesome, right? So if we put up two Azure Functions, one to get my blog posts and comments, and one to add a comment to it, and put that to store everything in table storage, then I should be good to go for storage for comments as well. I use JavaScript to get my comments and add comments, and I use my function for that. So Chris, that's a lot of stuff. Yes, it is. We end up using this. So we're going to use Azure DevOps, really for pipelines. We're going to use Docker, Jekyll, Azure Blob Storage, Azure Typescript Storage, Azure Functions, Azure CDN, Azure DNS. There's going to be HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, Markdown, TypeScript, YAML, Node, and NPM using Git and Pulumi. Got 49 minutes left. Let's go. Let's see if I can remember all of this. Okay. I am the last person of the day, which is probably a good thing because this might blow up in my face. There are tons of moving parts, but let's give it a try. So I'm going to go and create a directory, and inside Pulumi, inside Pulumi, I'm going to go and say cd Pulumi like that. I'm going to say Pulumi new. So has anyone not heard of Pulumi? Oh, that was quite a lot of you. Okay, so Pulumi is infrastructure as code written in code. So you create, instead of Terraform or Bicep, which is a DSL, you write your infrastructure using, in my case, I'm going to do TypeScript. So you use TypeScript to write your desired state, and then Pulumi takes your desired state and generates your resources for you. So I'm going to call this Azure Pages Demo. What?
Another abstraction.
Yes. It's just a cool, nicer abstraction for us developers because it feels natural. And we've got if statements and for loops and all of the code that we want to use and the configuration set system and everything inside of it. So Azure Pages Demo is the project name for it. Description, really don't care. It uses something called stacks to define different configurations. I only need one, dev is fine. It needs a passphrase because the config system is actually encrypting things, or can encrypt things, so I can add my configuration inside of my code that I check in because the config file actually encrypts the values inside of it, so I don't need a separate system to store my secure config. So it needs a passphrase, so I'm adding a really complex passphrase. It asks me what Azure location to use by default. Let's do West Europe, like that. It uses TypeScript in this case, so it's going to install using npm, which basically means it's going to install the whole world. Hopefully that shouldn't take too long, but while that runs, I'm just going to open up another tab here and go. There we code dot. I'm just going to open up this thing in Visual Studio Code. So inside here in code, can you people in the back see this? Ish at least. If not, there are spaces up here. If you don't want to move up here, then sucks to be you. So the way that Pulumi works is that you write code. So this is TypeScript. Actually, I'm going to do it a little bit bigger. So this is TypeScript. I don't need a storage account that they have defined for me. I don't need to read that. I'm going to change the way that it refers to Azure native, the Azure package, so that I can get all the Azure resources using one single namespace like this. So I got a resource group here. Just basically create a new resource group. Actually, I need to do one more thing before I get started. I need to say Pulumi login to tell it where to store my state, which is I want to store that locally, because you can log in and have state stored in different places. So I have a resource group here, and stupid name. So I'm going to use the stack name, which is basically what I put in before, Azure Pages Demos. So I'm going to go Pulumi.get stack. So that's going to give me, get project is what I want. So it's going to give me the name of my project. Pulumi is quite opinionated, so it will always suffix all of your names with a random string, so it gets like cattle naming, so it doesn't have naming collisions. Don't like that for resource groups, so I'm going to go and say resource group name is going to be Pulumi.getProject. So if I go and set it the name once more, I'm telling Pulumi that this is the actual name that I want. Please don't suffix it with your stupid random strings afterwards. So I have a resource group here, quite nice. I'm going to need two environments. I'm going to need one, obviously for my blog, that's important stuff, right? So I want to have a staging environment to verify that my blog posts are fine before they go to production, as we all do, right? And since I've got code, I'm going to have some repetition here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Pulumi here. I'm going to add another file, and I'm going to call it website environment. If I could spell environment.ts. And inside here, I'm going to start off by adding. This is sort of a boilerplate code for a Pulumi custom resource. So basically what they call a component resource here is an object or a class that contains other resources. So it's a way to group resources together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a few things that I'm going to reuse. I'm going to have the web storage account, the website storage website, the CDN stuff, and all of it's going to be in one resource. So I can just reuse this and create as many environments as I want. So inside here, inside the constructor, I'm going to go and create some things. So I'm going to create a storage account here. So you can see just new Azure storage account. You give it a name, account name, resource group name, what kind of storage. So it's basically what you would do in ARM or Bicep, but it's Typescript, which is nice. And it's also it's really cool because it's due to the fact that it's Typescript, it's also IntelliSense without any plugins or anything. It's just there. It just works. And it's also generated from the Azure OpenAPI spec that they have. So whenever there's a new feature released, they can just generate an SDK package update and you have all the new features in there. Awesome stuff. So I'm creating a storage account. This should be complaining. There's something about my IntelliSense stuff, this initializing I've got JavaScript issues here for some reason, but what I'm going to need is I'm going to have to create one of these. So I'm going to store this as a variable here, so I'm going to go private storage account of type storage account. So I store a reference to that. Then I go and create a storage account static website. The names of things here is completely the same that you would use in Bicep. So in Bicep there's a thing for a storage account static website, but I do it in code. I tell it what storage account to use, what resource group to put it into, what 404 document, index document, and also I tell it what to use as a parent. So you have this idea of hierarchy in your resources. So I'm just telling it that this storage account website is placed underneath the storage account. So they have to have a parent-child relationship. And then I add a couple of properties here. One called storage endpoint, where I can get the storage endpoint based on storage account.primaryendpoints.blob. And one thing that gives me the connection string to storage. So here is a bit of weirdness in Pulumi. All of your properties here, like for example name, if I hover over that, unfortunately my IntelliSense isn't working, the type of that is output of T. So it's basically an asynchronous operation because it won't know the storage account name until the resource has been created. So to handle that, all the properties that are generated during deployment are asynchronous. And the way that Pulumi knows this, so whenever you use what's called an output of t, it knows that, okay, I can't read this value yet, so I can't use that resource at the moment. I'll go and set up every other resource, then I'll come back and see, can I do this now? Oh, okay, now they've all completed, so I have all the values. So to be able to get the connection string here, it uses pulumi.all to wait for two different output of t's and says, when you can have done the list storage account keys and the storage account name is available, then I want to go and create a connection string here based on the values that you're getting back. So there's a bit of string manipulation going on to get the connection string. Since there's no connection string available, it's available in the UI, but it's not actually available through the API. So you have to create by concatenating yourself. So that should be pretty much all I need for my environment to begin with. The storage account, static website. Go back out here, go and do an import here from, let's see if that works. That actually works. Website environment like that, and then we can just go down here and do create two environments. So now by just running this, I have a production environment, I have a staging environment. They're going to be called the same thing as the project, and the staging one is going to be project name dash staging. So all I need, got two environments up and running with storage accounts and everything. So now I've got a storage account and a static website. I also need CDN. So I need to put CDN in there. So let's go ahead and try doing something like this. Prod environment.add CDN. Pass in the, actually, no. Yes. No, sorry. It's me reading wrong. I need to do this first. I'm going to create a CDN profile. We obviously need one of those to be able to create a CDN. So I create a CDN profile. Then I call add CDN, and I pass in my CDN profile. And a timeout, so I'm going to wait for, there's going to be a cache for 10 minutes for that CDN profile, CDN. Now that I have that, in a good world, I could have pressed Control dot here and added it dynamically, but for some reason Visual Studio is not playing along as it should. So I'm going to go in here and manually add a method called add CDN. Actually, we can do this. That's what I want. Everything is jumping around on my screen. There it is. So this thing here is going to be a CDN profile. I happen to know that the type of a CDN profile is that. So I'm going to say that you're going to pass in is going to be a CDN profile. This is going to be a duration. That's optional to pass in, and it's type string like that. So with Pulumi, we have this ability to actually create our own custom resources and add functions to them. And in those functions or methods, we can go and do more stuff. So inside this, I'm going to say, okay, I want you to add CDN to this specific resource, this specific environment. And if we go and look at, there's a lot of code. I know that. That's typical Microsoft code. It's like, oh, it's a snippet, and then you collapse it and you go, boilerplate code. Don't need to know about that. Row 1, 2, 3, 4, 642. What happened in there? Oh, boilerplate. It is a bit of boilerplate. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling out the host name based on the web endpoint for my storage account. And then I go and create a CDN endpoint, and in here what you have to tell it is a bunch about origin headers and origins, and then I've also added a cache expiration, so it caches everything for 10 minutes if I have provided a duration, otherwise it bypasses the cache. So for my staging environment, I don't want caching. For production, I want caching. And I also have a delivery policy rule here down here that says if you request HTTP, redirect to HTTPS. So I'm forcing them to go to HTTPS all the time. So there's a lot of markup in here, but in the end it's a fairly simple thing, and honestly you can copy most of it from the internet. I'm saying that because I did exactly that. So we want to have my endpoint here, sorry, that's the one. And the annoying thing is, like, now I can, so there it is. I just need to declare it as private and question mark because it might not be set, it's an optional. So now I have my CDN in place. That should be pretty good. I just want to have one more thing here. I want to have another project or property down here, which gives me the URL to the CDN. So it basically pulls out the host name of the endpoint so that I can see that if I want to read that at some point. And also, I am going to have to purge the CDN at some point. So I'm going to use an Azure CLI command. What I'm doing here is just doing a string interpolation thing here to get the command that I will have to run. So once I've run this Pulumi, I can then copy this command and just paste it into my pipeline so that my pipeline can run this purge thing, and I don't need to figure out all the names and the profile names and everything because it's already available in here. So it's just a little helper property. That should also mean that I should be able to go down here and say staging environment dot add CDN, CDN profile, but it shouldn't have any caching turned on. So that now leaves me with a static website in my storage account. I have CDN in front of it. I need custom domain. I already have a DNS in Azure, so I have a DNS name called zerocall.com, which doesn't actually have anything, but I've registered that domain and it's hosted by Azure, so by using that I can go in and modify my DNS dynamically using Pulumi as well to add domain names, right? Quite neat. So let's go back to a website environment here. Down here at the end, after we've added our CDN, we want to create a custom domain name and we want to connect that to the CDN. So we get custom domain names. So let's go and see if I can get Pulumi 7. There it is. So I create a CNAME record. CNAME record just goes and says I want to have a CNAME record. You will find my DNS resource that I have since before in the resource group DNS under the zone name zerocall.com. Normally, you wouldn't do a weird thing down here. Normally, you would just pass in this.endpoint, but for some reason, 50% of the time yesterday, that failed. So I'm fall back into doing a slightly uglier syntax, which is why I've got no idea, but has caused problems. You should always leave stuff like that in your code. Just the way it works. So I got that. I got a CNAME record. Copy that as a private variable, because I'm going to need that. So private members, it's going to be up here somewhere. There it is. We'll do private, and we type it as a record, and it will be optional because it's not being set up in the constructor. Okay, that would set up my CNAME record. Now the next part is I need to connect that domain name to my CDN. Yes?
I think you forgot a semicolon on the declaration of the...
I did, thank you.
Yeah.
In TypeScript, it's actually not mandatory, but thank you anyway.
I never used TypeScript
No,
in my entire life.
thank you. I enjoyed hearing it before I go and do something and it blows up in your face and people in the audience goes, you missed that thing.
Yeah.
No shit, Sherlock, you could have told me before I failed. Thank you.
Sorry
Okay.
if I destroyed on something for
So, there's a problem now. So what I want to do is I want to connect my custom domain to my CDN. There is a little problem here. There is the ability to do that connection using Pulumi, and there is the ability to do it using Bicep and using ARM, but there's a tiny little issue, and that's the fact that you cannot actually turn on SSL using that. There's a separate Azure CLI command to turn on SSL for your custom domain name, which has some issues. Or it might be that you can do it in ARM and Bicep now, but the version that the API doesn't support it in that way. So basically what I'm saying is, you can't do it in Pulumi out of the box. Luckily, Pulumi has an old SDK that is handcrafted. That has that feature. And with Pulumi, you can combine the old SDK and the new SDK in the same project. So I can actually go and use both parts. Unfortunately, the old one doesn't quite have what I need, but there's a GitHub repo that has a sample of how to do it in your own code. So what I've done is I'm going to do it on my own. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to say I'm going to create a CDN custom domain.ts, which is going to be my resource. And then I'm going to do a real Microsoft thing. I'm only going to paste 300 lines of code here, and that's a shortened version of what is on GitHub. But what they are kind of doing here is they're with TypeScript. Pulumi doesn't support this in C# as far as I know, but in TypeScript you can go and create your own custom resources, and what I'm doing in here is I'm creating like little create, read, update, delete methods, and what I'm doing in here, for example, disable custom, here it is, you can see, for example, cdn client.customdomains.disable custom HTTPS. That is actually using the Azure SDK to do its bidding. So it's basically using the Azure CLI under the hood and a bunch of things like that. Magical stuff. If you want to know more about that, let me know. I can show you. But for now, Just going to leave it. The only thing that's a problem here now is that I'm missing a couple of packages. So I'm going to pull up this. I'm going to go cd pulumi, npm install, and I want to install Pulumi Azure and Azure ARM CDN, which are two packages needed to call the endpoints in an easy way. So it's basically just that looks better. So it's just a simplification. I use their SDK so I don't have to build up my own REST calls to do it. So that gives me a custom domain thing that I just extended. As I said, all the code is on GitHub if you want to do it on your own. But once I have that, it's being built in the background. We should be able to say Pulumi. Okay, while that runs, I'm just going to go and import it manually and see if I can get that to work properly. From / can I get that? Yes, I can. Cdn custom domain. I have a new resource called Cdn custom domain resource down here. Pulumi _ 10. Nope. Why did that not work? Was it _9? Oh, there it is. Sorry. So now that I've created my own custom resource, you use it like any other resource. There's no difference between your custom-made one and anything built into this SDK. So you can just extend it to whatever you need. So I'm going to create a custom domain resource telling it that I want to call it this.zerocall.com. It's going to set up some endpoints, enable HTTPS and all of that for me, which should be fairly good. Have another little output here. Another URL. So in this case, I want to get the URL to the website. And I can get that from the CNAME record. The CNAME record has a fully qualified domain name. Unfortunately, this fully qualified domain name ends with .. If anybody can explain why it ends with ., that would be awesome. Which means that I now have to do like a little apply asynchronous operation. When I get the asynchronous FQDN, go and please give me and remove the dot at the end and add HTTPS / in front of it. So yeah, stuff. We're all coders. We all know what it means. Something's broken. Okay, this should be it now. This should be all I need, right? There's the storage, there's the CDN, there's the custom domain name, there's all we need, except for the commenting, which will come in later, because I need to get something into production before I can try adding new features, right? I learned my lesson. So, back out here, Pulumi, up, passphrase, complex passphrase. Now, this is that's why IntelliSense doesn't work. NVM use 16.13.0, switch version of node to use on my machine. Run Pulumi again. Now it should work. Okay, so that explains why IntelliSense wasn't working. I actually did exactly the same thing earlier today sitting in that couch back there, but apparently I forgot and switched back to the old version of node. Okay, so this is going to run for a little while. So what it's doing now is basically looking at my desired state, figuring out what's needed, what's happened, what needs to be created, what needs to be updated, what needs to be deleted. That takes a little while. Pulumi has for some reason become honestly quite slow. It was much faster when I started a couple of years ago, but we'll leave that in the background and I will go over to my code again. So what I need here is I need to clone my website because I'm going to need my markup and my templates and everything, and that's my existing website. So I'm going to go and say, pull this up here. I'm going to go cd ... clear the screen, and then we're going to go git clone. Look at that. It just happens to be the last thing I cloned on my machine. Let's clone that. Pass. That was way more complex than test, which is my passphrase for the other project. So this is now going to clone my website. While that clones in the background, this thing is still working. So I cloned it into my site here. So here is my website, my blog. It has a .git directory that I don't want because I'm going to create another Git repo. So what we're going to do is do rm-rf site /git to remove the Git repo. So it's not the Git repo inside my Git repo. Just a tiny little thing. Okay. There is a small issue with my current web application because I'm not running this solution in production. I'm actually running GitHub Pages, and GitHub Pages allows the URLs to end with slash or without anything. It doesn't need .html at the end, but since I'm storing stuff in storage with CDN in front of it, all the files will actually need to be .html at the end. And with Jekyll, you do that with permalinks. You just tell it what format to use. Why? Yeah, so how about running a demo with, okay, there it is, without the keyboard. So I'm just going to change that so it uses .html at the end of all links. That should help. What else do we need? Well, Git init to make it a Git repo. Should be a good start. Let's see what Pulumi is doing. Oh, look at that. Pulumi is now done. It's saying that these are all the things that you want me to create. Does this look okay? I'm looking at it going, yeah, obviously. Yes. That's now going to go ahead and start deploying my infrastructure in the background using Pulumi. While that is being deployed, I'm going back here. Pulumi is now going to create a little .pulumi folder in here, which has a bunch of information about my stacks and my state and everything. I don't want to commit that to my GitHub repo, or my Git repo at this point, so I'm going to go and say .git ignore. And I'm going to say, please don't check in Pulumi, like that. So now we can go here and see, here's my website, here's my Pulumi scripts and everything. Awesome. Let's go and say initial commit. Cool. What we need now is an Azure pipeline. So I need this to run as a pipeline that runs on every commit, right? Fairly simple to do. You pull up this, you go azure-pipeline.yaml. How many of you like YAML? How many of you think that YAML is the worst shit since ever? You're losing. I kind of agree. I used to agree, or I sort of felt like, oh, it's actually fairly readable and everything. But once you've got these indentations wrong at some point, then we had a discussion earlier today. It's like, oh, it's no new line, and then in some cases there's a dash in front of it. In some cases there's not a dash in front of it. And then, oh, if you unindent this thing one step, then it fails down here because that gets. Anyhow, luckily I don't have to write anything because I only work on projects where I have snippets. So here it is. Gonna go trigger main to tell it what to trigger on. I'm gonna have one single variable in there. I'm gonna have a build stage that generates the web application and 2 releases. So inside my build, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a step here or a job called run Jekyll that runs the Jekyll container. The Jekyll container is executed like this. Let's remove this so you can get a little bit more space. It's fairly simple. The Jekyll container, whenever you start the Jekyll container, all it really does, it takes a folder, looks at the markdown, generates a file, a static website, and outputs it in a different directory. So what I'm doing is I'm actually taking the site directory of my code, mapping it into SRV Jekyll source. Basically, here is where you'll find. So I'm mapping my source code into the Jekyll container at the location where it expects to find the source code. Then I map the staging directory of my pipeline to the destination directory inside my container, which is where Jekyll is going to put its results. So basically, when Jekyll goes in and says, I'm going to take this, generate a static site and put it there, what's actually happening is taking my source directory and putting it into my destination, basically my artifacts staging directory. And then there's some weird Jekyll rootless, blah, blah, blah. I'm using the Jekyll container, and I'm telling it what source and destination to use. So it's fairly simple. It took a little while to figure out the Jekyll rootless equals true, because if you don't have that, it weirdly explodes on permissions. And then I tried to set up the permissions in Linux. And honestly, I have better things to do with my life than try to figure out how that works. So I just went and said rootless equals true, and rootless means run as root. Who would have known? Yeah, it's like, anybody bike here? You know the little pedals that you clip into? They are called clipless pedals. Yes. Okay, so pipeline 4, publish artifact. The only thing it does is publish build staging directory, that's it, calls it site, that's about it. It's not indented right. Look at that. I've learned my YAML. And then in my release, I'm just going to go and do a deployment job, deploy to staging. Inside my deployment, and don't ask me why I'm using Windows latest. I don't know. I should use Linux, but it was Windows in my snippet, and it works just as well. Publish website, basically take whatever is in workspace site, which is where my artifact is stored, and publish that to my project name staging web app. And for the production, it's the same thing. The only thing I'm changing here is I have this purge Cdn command at the end, because at the end I need to purge the Cdn to get it to show up on my website within 10 minutes. And you have to realize when I deploy stuff to my blog, those 10 minutes, that is important. No, actually, it's not important at all, but I generally deploy my website, my site, and then I go and tweet at the same time. If there's more than 10 minutes between me deploying it and me tweeting it, I'm going to forget tweeting it, and then nobody comes and looks at what I've written. So I need a Cdn Purge command here. Do you remember that I put out one of those commands in... Oh, this failed in the background. You're kidding me. Oh, okay. I know what this is. AC login. For some reason, it keeps logging me out. I'm just going to log into Azure. That's why it failed. Come on. No thanks. That's me. Cool. This should now be able to run, and it didn't output the thing that I need. Okay, so give me a second, we'll just run this again. AC. So, Pulumi uses your Azure CLI to run its code. So we're going to do Pulumi. Let's try this again then. Damn it, this was not supposed to happen. Now it's going to complain about my passphrase and not allow me to type it in. So I actually need to export my Pulumi passphrase, and my passphrase is obviously test. Keep stuff safe, bro. Pulumi up, run that again. This is going to take some time. That's a bit of annoying because I have to wait for that. Actually, I don't. We can carry on and I'll come back to this, and I'll add I'm going to add my purge command here at the end. But that's why I want to run this. So that output at the end of Pulumi running is basically my command, so I can just copy that and paste it in, so I don't know what to put there because I'm forgetful. So this is going to run and create my dynamic resource. Cool. While that is running, let's see what else we can do. Oh, we can go ahead and we can say added pipeline. Push that. Git push that to my repo. I don't have a repo. Okay. Need a repo. DevOps. Loving it. Haven't been there apparently since 2011. Azure Pages demo. Creating a new project. Should be fairly fast. There it is. You go to the repo section. You go and say I want to publish some existing using SSH. Copy the command. Go back out here. Paste that command. Push, passphrase, not the simple one, but the complicated one. Pushing my code, there it is. So I should now have code in here. Let's see what Pulumi is doing. Pulumi is, oh, it's done. So now why did it not output? Ah! Sorry. Missed one step here at the end. In my index file, I obviously need to output my variables to be able to get them. So we have a Pulumi 11 that I was missing. So if you want to output information from Pulumi, you just do an export const and then whatever you want to output. So these are the different things that I want to output. With that in place, if I rerun this should now be a fairly quick run because it's a no operation. It's not going to do anything. Just going to verify everything along the way here. Okay, while that runs, I'm going to fix that later on. I have other stuff to do. In here, I'm going to go to pipelines. I have a pipeline, so I'm going to go create pipeline from, let's do like that so you can see, Azure repo. I only have one repo in here. It's an existing repo or pipeline. My existing pipeline is called Azure pipelines.yaml. Continue. Save this. So since I'm deploying stuff to Azure, I am using a service connection down here called Azure Pages demo, so I need to basically create a service connection for Azure for that to work. So we do that by going to Project, Settings, Service Connections. There it is, Service Connections, create a service connection, Azure Resource Manager, automatic seems fine. I think I've got like 1,000 of these automatically created service principals by now, but that's the way it works. This is going to try and load my subscriptions, which takes a bit of, there it is. I'm going to go Azure's free trial. Now it's asking me to log in, so let's go next. This is my favorite feature of all time. Loving the fact that I can use my face to log into this. This is the best feature ever. Okay, so I'm setting up my service connection. With that in place, I should be able to get my resource group called Azure Pages Demo. Calling it Azure Pages Demo. Save. Setting up connection. Is Pulumi done? No, but it asked me if I want to make it do it. Yes, I want to do that. Setting up connection. Setting up connection. I am going to run out of time because this is being slow, but we'll see how far I get. Next, we have environments, right? I have two different environments that I'm deploying to. So under environments here, I have a production and staging. So for production, we obviously have to do approval because we can't just deploy stuff to production. So I'm going to add an approval step here. I'm going to add myself as an approver. Create. Okay. So now I have my pipeline, I have my environments, I have my approval. The only thing missing is, if we look here, there's an AC production Cdn Purge Command that looks like this. I'm going to take that, put that into my pipeline where it says Cdn Purge Command. So that's the command that I'm going to run. And then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say stuff.
Can you check the last part of the purge command? I think it was, we want the /star.
Yes,
Okay.
content paths. It's basically purge all of it, purge the world. So yes, there's that is actually correct. But thank you for validating it. So we'll do a git push, add the SSH key, password. That's being pushed. Let's see now. That's the one. We go to my pipeline. Have a pipeline. It's up and running because there's a there's a trigger for it. It should take a few seconds, but it needs permissions. I just want to wait for permissions to pop up. Can you please ask me for permission so I can go ahead and okay. Why? Okay, so it runs that. Give me a second. Should be fairly fast. Okay, so what have we got left? Well, this should generate a static site. It should set up the CDN. It should set up the storage, the blah, 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 all of it, the website. So when I get to deploy site to staging, when that's done, I should have a staging environment to look at. I still don't have my commenting stuff. So I can't comment on anything, so I need Azure functions for that. And there's a really cool way to do that in old Pulumi. Not the new, but the old Pulumi has a feature for this. But as I said, you can combine this, which is quite nice. So what we can do in here, it's going to create a couple of functions in code. In my repo here, it's nice. We're combining infrastructure code and function code and things in one place. It's awesome. Put it all in one place. Get comments.handler.ts. So I'm going to create an Azure function in Typescript. It looks like this. Get handler like that. So what you do is you basically create, I need Azure storage, so I'm going to go and import that. So we're going to do npm add, I install Azure storage like that. So what it's doing is basically it creates a callback function or a function that takes a context and an HTTP request, retains a promise. It checks if is it in staging, then I use one connection string, otherwise I use another connection string, so I use the staging or the production one. Then I look at my Azure table storage service, check if the table exists. If it doesn't exist, then return an empty array. There are no comments because nobody has already nobody commented because there's no table. And then it gets all of the if there is a table, it gets all of the comments recursively because the API only returns a certain amount of comments. And you know, with a massively popular blog like mine, there are so many comments that it will obviously need to recursively fetch them over and over. Have a little helper for that. Get handler 2 is the. So how do I verify if it's staging? Well, if the refer header contains the word staging. Fairly simple, basic check, still works. And get comments recursively is just literally a recursive loop to find all of my comments. And I need a way to add comments as well. So we need an add comments handler.ts. And it looks pretty much the same. Once again, function, it checks the table storage if it's there. If there is a table thing, it inserts a new comment, otherwise it doesn't. That's basically what it does. Actually, it throws a 500 if the table is not there. That's all it does. So that should be my handlers. I'm going to go back and just verify if it's started asking me for permissions. It has, so I'm just going to go and give it permission to deploy, permission to read my repo, and permission to deploy to the staging environment. That's fine. Okay, so now I have these two handlers. What is really cool with Pulumi, the old version of Pulumi, is that if we go and import the old SDK under the name AZ, they have a really cool feature where you can go and say function, actually, so you can declare an HTTP function in here and basically say, here is the type, which is then going to be my callback type. So we're going to go in here and say, I have a get comments handler. And there will be an add comment handler as well. So I can just get my functions from here and create Azure functions from that. So basically, here's a TypeScript file with some TypeScript in it. Please generate a function from that. Declare that as an HTTP function, telling it that I want to listen to comments or /comments/post ID for the thing. So adding and getting. And then there's this really cool function app thingy. It's supposed to be function. Oh, that's the one. Look through it. We have this type in Pulumi called a multi-callback function app, which will actually go and create a function app for us automatically and add the two functions that we've defined in our TypeScript code, generate a zip file, add it to blob storage, and create a function for us on the fly. So we have all of it in here, adding a couple of connection strings as environment variables, some site configuration, adding allowed origins. So I have course support, saying that only the prod environment URL and the staging environment URL is allowed to do calls to this endpoint, and a little extension so that it doesn't have I think it's /API as standard for functions. I don't want that. I just want to have /comments. That is the really cool part, because now all I have to do is not go to PowerPoint, because that's not going to help me. I'm going to go here. I'm going to say Pulumi up. That's going to run. While that runs, I'm going to go and have a look at this. So now it has deployed to staging environment. It stopped at the production environment because I have an approval there. But what we should be able to do is go back out here, find the staging URL, which is that one, browse to that. Yeah. That's my website. And it's hard to see, and I don't want to zoom because it causes some problems on my machine. But there is a little key padlock up here. It has that's TLS turned on. There is a 1 or 2 minutes delay from turning on TLS to it actually being there. It can be up to 10 minutes sometime, but this time it was there. So now I've got my website, and I can go in here and look at my fantastic blog post about bicep, for example. And because of that, I'm using Pulumi instead. But okay, no commenting down here. That's kind of a problem thing. So what we're going to do is going to see here, is this done? It's still working. So while that works to figure out how to deploy the functions, I need to add some HTML and some JavaScript to get a commenting section on my website. fairly simple thing to do. All we have to do is go into the site. How can it have 1,000 things in here?
Node modules.
It shouldn't check in node modules. Okay, let's ignore that. Let's go out here. So I'm going to go to my website, and I'm going to go to my layouts and my post layouts. So here's the layout for all of my posts. And I'm going to do it below the content of my website, which is post full content. That sounds like where the content ends up. So let's go in there, and we're going to say comments 01. So I'm going to add a little form here. So it's just a very basic HTML form with a name, a comment, a submit button, and a little loading comments. Thank you for a comment and comments div. It's going to look like crap if I just deploy it like that, and so I'm going to go and add some small amount of CSS to get it to look okay. Yeah, I know, it's CSS. And it's still going to be broken. That's just the way CSS works. And then I'm going to add a little JavaScript here then. So first of all, pull in a polyfill for fetch if you're running IE, because IE doesn't have fetch built in. Then I'm going to create a page ID based on the path that I'm on, so the page name. And then the endpoint for my functions is going to be that. And then in here we can do a little fetch call. So when the page loads, it calls my backend get comments function and gets all the comments and adds them to my, first it removes the loading thing, and then it adds it, for each comment I add it to my backend. So to be able to add it, I have this little helper function. It gets the comments element, and then the add comment basically just creates a little header main footer thing with my, so it basically just generates a bunch of HTML for me, with a little bit of HTML and code, because we obviously don't want to allow the cross-site scripting, or sorry, script, not cross-site scripting, anyhow, request forgery and stuff like that. And then after that, there's a bit more here. When we want to do a post, there's a little get element by ID. It finds this, listens to the submit event. It disables the form. It does a post to my backend with my content, and then when it comes back, if everything is fine, it adds my new comment to the comment section, and it says thank you at the end. And there's a little helper here that disables the form by just disabling all the HTML elements. So that should be good to go. So if we go ahead and we go here, and I just ignore the fact that there's a ton of node stuff that I didn't expect it to check in. We're just going to put that in there anyway. Added commenting functionality, like that. Do a git push that to the cloud. That's going to take some time. What is this thing doing? It's saying that I want to create a multi-function callback app. That sounds good. Go ahead and create my functions. While that is running, I can also go ahead and approve this, because obviously it looks good, so I'm going to approve that to go to production. So first it needs permissions, and then I'm going to approve it. Now, we should have, in my opinion, we should have another deployment going on with my changes with the comments going on in there. So we have one release going into production. I have a new thing coming on the way out to my staging, and I've got Pulumi sitting here trying to create some function apps for me. There is nothing more for me to show you now until this works. Any questions? I know there's a lot of stuff. It's just the reason for me doing this talk and writing this session is mostly because I want to show people, maybe not you normally as a target group, but the thing of with the cloud, you look at a problem, you look at what do I need to solve, and then you go to Azure and you go and look what resources do I have or what services do I have to solve these problems, and then you just plug them together. You just plug them together, and it should just work. And honestly, this is actually quite nice. In the end, even though it's a demo that, yes, I have snippets, but I can pretty much honestly admit that it took me all of 6 hours, I think, to get all of this up and running, where parts of it was at an airport in Helsinki. That's about the amount of time I put into getting this to work. And for me, that's actually a very big win. Because yes, I could do it with GitHub Pages, but I've got more control here. And this is a fully working system when I'm done with it. It does do everything I need. And let's see here. So this is now the publishing. I know, okay. I wouldn't have a staging environment for my blog. I can honestly admit that. I'm taking it a bit further. But it's kind of nice to have. And if you don't want to use it for a blog, imagine having this for your documentation sites or documentation pages for your project that you're working on. Being able to deploy documentation by just writing your markdown, generate a little website that people can actually browse to without having to go to some Jira wiki or Jira backend thingy or some SharePoint stuff and things like that. There would actually be generated content here. So this should, hopefully soon, I should be able to show you this. This thing is done. So my functions are now up and running at least. It's a good start. This thing is publishing for my production. This thing is publishing, it's waiting. When running in the cloud, always get your own build agents. Soon. I've got 6 minutes to show you that this works. So it's uploading. There it is. I'm going to cancel this because purging the CDN actually takes about 10 minutes. And it's using up one of the build agents that I might want to use for my other deployments. So being cheap and not having my own build agents, I'm going to go and cancel this. But you can see that the purge CDN was going on. If I cancel that, yes, I go into this thing here. I change the URL to Azure Pages Demo without staging. I run that. Here it is in production. Same content, so I now have a staging and a production environment. Everything in here works. And we go back to the staging environment and we have a look at my staging release. The suspense. I just want this to run through. Come on, I want to show you and then you can go home and have dinner with your family and actually have a nice weekend. There was a big, bald dude standing in the way between me and family time. Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. It's not me. It's probably some American douchebag who's using up all the build agents because they're just kind of woken up now, I think. Okay, so it's publishing. This is actually, it's quite nice actually how the Jekyll part only takes 45 seconds all in all to actually download the image, run the container, and generate the static site and everything, which is quite impressive to be perfectly honest. This thing here should, come on. Alan is going to do with one of these talks, I know this, about careers and career in software, right? Yeah. So I would suggest that you add one thing, and if you're ever going to do demos, learn to tap dance or sing or something as well, so you can basically entertain people while waiting for build agents. Okay.
You can do stand-up comedy, Chris.
Except for the fact that I'm not funny. Big problem with stand-up, honestly. Being not funny and doing stand-up comedy is just not funny. Refresh. Loading comments. I did have some issues with loading comments, but I think it's just the fact that it's... Nope. Give me 1 second to just have a look at that. It's always that last step. Azure Pages. That one. Let's see what's wrong with it. Functions. Get comments. Actually, we can go back because I think I know what might be wrong. Configuration. Show values. Nope, that looks okay. Functions. Get. Test. Come on. 2 minutes. Test run. HTTP. Get. Internal server error.
Mm.
How do you end up with an internal server error with snippets?
No table storage.
No Azure Storage.js. Did I? Oh, is that why? Did I do the? Did I? Ha! Sorry, I can. Give me 1 minute to fix that. I know what's wrong. It's in here. I was in the wrong place. CD Pulumi. Azure add storage. I added storage in the wrong map folder. That's why. Sorry about that. This should be pretty fast. Pulumi up. Pulumi be faster than ever. Alright, so it might take some time. Sorry about that. I'm running out of time. So yeah, I added the storage in the wrong place, or the npm package. But what should happen here is, if I've added that node module, is that it actually loads the comments because it runs this JavaScript entry, shows the input form, and when you go submit, it just calls that other function that adds it to table storage. Very, very simple. There is a tiny bug in my application. I want to highlight that if you go and think that this is really cool. There's an interesting situation in Azure, and that's the fact that you cannot connect a custom domain to an Azure CDN if the custom domain isn't already there. Makes sense, right? You can also not remove a custom domain as long as the domain name is there. So in Terraform and Bicep, actually I don't know how Bicep handles it, but Terraform and Pulumi, there's that problem of I have to add the scene name before I can do the connection to the storage account, but when I do a Pulumi destroy and want to remove it, it has to be the other way around. I have to remove it, and that's actually not possible to do in Pulumi. So the only way to get this to delete is to manually go in and delete the CNAME record first and then destroy your thing. I just want to mention that there is a little bit of an issue, and I don't know how they figured out that they should sort that out, but yeah, that's the way it works. It does work, I promise. If you're, I'll show you while you're standing here with your coats trying to get out. So I can look at this. Other than that, we've got. My machine is completely bored. I'm not allowed to do anything. So we've gone through all of that stuff. I just want to say thank you all for listening, and the reason I want to go to the end here is.
Thank you.
Is a thank you screen, and also if you have any questions or want some code or want to have a chat, reach me on Twitter. I'm more than happy to talk about Pulumi and Terraform and weird Azure stuff as well. So thank you all for listening. I'm going to let you all go home.
Excellent. So, thanks for stepping in, Chris. You may not know this, but Chris, I think I asked him yesterday if he could present it our best, and he says the demo is almost ready. I'll get it finished and I'll get it working. So, well done.
I almost got it finished, and for some reason my screen. Look at this. I'm just gonna look at this. It's so beautiful down here at the bottom. There are my comment section, and. And if I refresh the page, yes, I did go over by 3 minutes. I'm sorry about that, but now you saw it at least.
Super spammable.